Григория говорить. Он какие-то другие нам предлагал темы, а мы про это его спрашиваем. Это первое. Второе, вы знакомитесь совсем с уникальным, по-моему, человеком, специалистом, экспертом, организатором, менеджером, редактором.
Editor, and so he's an amazing personality in many ways, and his analytical professionalism is amazing. So because he knows what's happening in every specific region, and has this in-depth knowledge concerning that. And we as specialists and even foreign sources sometimes, so they always. So always refer themselves to this organization, which is called the Caucasian Knot, and because it provides an excellent analysis, authentic, unadulterated, truthful, and absolutely trustworthy. It's because we can find their professional analysis of what the reality is all about and what the reality, the real situation gives. And I'm happy to introduce to you this wonderful person who speaks very eloquent, so in good Russian. And who travels the world, but Kutuzovsky Prospect is not the place where he can go to, and he's not attracted. And Golitsyno is not the place that he would be attracted to Golitsyno. But we insisted that he came, and he came. And that at Kutuzovsky Prospect we have other people just driving along that road, and so they'll go to Rublevskaya highway, and so we're worlds apart from those persons. So when I was asked to come out with the subject matter, so then Russian journalists, so they don't tell the truth because they want to be deceived and misled, or they do it intentionally, and this is very interesting. So then, do they want to tell the truth or not? Okay, then let me talk a little bit about what we're doing, and then as usual, and so with the help of wonderful moderators of the school and the founders of the school. So then all the managers are here, and so will help me. But taking advantage of this tradition, so we'll give the floor to you. And at 4 o'clock I will leave, and but before that I will ask you to start asking questions about Caucasus, because I don't want to preach, because some people have nothing to do with the Caucasus, they don't know anything. Some people are related to some came from the Caucasus before, but I think it would be very useful just to learn more about Caucasus. For those who live there or just never lived there, never been there, so how is it related to me vis-a-vis myself? And then so then I was so there was a car in front of me with a strobing police cruiser with strobing light, and so, but it was not escorting me, it was escorting someone else, probably you. And for those drive past, those who don't know what Caucasian Knot is, I don't want just to talk too much about myself, and I will tell you briefly whatever I say. What would you like to talk about? Because within the framework of the model that we're using and tested before, so maybe not questions to me, but ideas, considerations. What would you like me to respond to? So your views, your understanding of the problem. So you can share with me on that account. So the Caucasian Knot, that's a publication. So you can see that there's a list of regions. So I can enlarge it. So they cover 20 regions, so the south of Russia and the southern Caucasus, and including so the recognized states. So we cover 24 hours a day, 24 by 7. We've been around 15 years. I'm from Moscow. I was born, grew up in Moscow. Yes, I have no relationship. I don't have apartments or places or property or members of the family in the Caucasus. But why did I start to study Caucasus? I think that anyone just may all of a sudden, so though you don't have Caucasus in your heart, but nevertheless you may be attracted to it. And in the last 15 years, we want to be professional from the viewpoint of information we convey, facts, events, the actual information. And as you see, so we have become partners of BBC. We're proud of being partners of BBC because it means that we are recognized professionally. It's a very good compliment. Thank them. And then if you so key it in the search engine, you will immediately that you were quoted by big news agencies, and the media were quoted because they think that the information that we generate is valuable. So our focus is certainly human rights. What's happening in the regions where there are violations of human rights, egregious, routine, norm, it's day-to-day life. And so very few, they don't write much about it. And unfortunately, so one of the sources of information like theft, torture, kidnapping, so we certainly write not only about kidnapping, but other media do not take on what we write about. And this year, when the media situation has worsened, so then they quote us less than they used to, because you know what happened with Lenta.ru, Gazeta.ru, with many other publications. You know what happened. I hope that Dost will survive. And so I look at the person sitting on my left, and we are trying just to generate different materials, news, reference materials, reference materials, so different materials. So we think that that the value, so the price of war. So many some people, Caucasian people, they announce jihad. So they are fighting nationalism. So how much does it cost? Not money-wise, because I don't know this. So there are people who will calculate other publications who are involved in corruption. So we calculate the price in human loss and the loss of human life. And so how many people died in process? So we say monthly, so we provide information, pictures, statistics. So if you want to see the cost of war denominated in human lives, and this is certainly from the viewpoint of mainstream, it's not correct, because so then civilians, special agencies, and the combatants. And so there's, and then here you as the reader, so a combatant, for example, a combatant was killed, so a bandit was killed. Do you want to understand whether he is a combatant or a guy just who was shot dead in his own home, was later announced, was called a combatant? I don't know. So whenever so we don't say. So we don't say that the guy who was killed was pure as driven snow. Maybe he was a terrorist, but do the soldiers who are shooting at the house? So do they know who is inside the house? Whether so people inside the house are terrorists or not, or just they were shooting at this house preventively? As by way of prevention, because they have no way of knowing who's inside, and so there's a lot of propaganda and different Russian resources that announce everyone terrorists. So the ordinary people, they announce terrorists, and so the combatants, they think that they call them terrorists, etc. And so that's why we get focused not only on the events that occur during the. So you remember the attack on Grozny that occurred recently, and then after that, and so the first publications And so then, so you can see what happened, how many people died, and how many people were hunted down and killed. So we are happy that Sloan and Dost actually confirmed this information. Memorial spoke about that in this release. So there are still some forces who are ready to distribute information about what's happening in the Caucasus right now. And so this information is quite sad because certainly we like to talk about big yields of wheat, but no one talks about what was happening in Kushevka village, so famous, notorious village of Kushevka. Certainly we're more interested in to hear the people who are not seen, the voice that cannot be heard, and so we are interested in something that is something low profile, and that is something that we need to attract public attention to, and not only to show how in Chechnya they burned down the houses of the relatives of the terrorists, but we need to appeal to the readership. Who is our reader? And so how do we treat him? What do you want to get from our reader? What's the response we're waiting? So for example, you can see so this voting program. So we did voting about our readers, so about best comments, about 35 users. We have 35,000, and they contribute comments. And every week, so we provided the best comments and to the vote. We put to the vote of our this is our editorial board's decision, and we put it to the vote, and they voted. I don't know the results of our subscribers, so who voted for the best comments. So the voting in the fall. And
we believe that a publication like ours, or any modern progressive media resource, must face the task of communicating with the audience and to deal as to what is happening in the neighborhood, and to express the opinions in different ways. And this is what I will indeed stop with advertising my own website. So we suggest to be exchanging SMS text messages, texting, and I'm often in the regions of Russia, and often do I hear that in the Caucasus, and not just in the Caucasus, but also in Stavropol, in the Kuban region, why is it that you're not informing us? I'm often criticized, and the media resources are often criticized for not informing the public in a due way. When, say, your neighbor's house is burnt down, as the case was in Chechnya, when your neighbor woman is taken out of her house and beaten, then it is indeed up to you to inform the media resources. Yes, there are not enough media resources to make a story out of your material, but we are prepared to do that. We are ready to do that. We have a special section in our forum, in our website, which allow us to accumulate the text messages from our readers and viewers, and we are preparing and publishing such and don't hush up, don't be silent. Yes, indeed, we have journalists in the regions, but we are not in a position to track down every event. It is up to you to inform us. One can tell us about a Chechen writer entering the shortlist for a literary award. Somebody feels it important to tell us about the counter-terrorist operation in Nalchik. There are different opinions, but the most important thing that we want to tell our reader is that this is your task. This is not our task to it is not only our task, but also your civic mission to inform the media resources. So it is my turn to ask you, what do you think is important? Are you ready to ask questions? Or you do not want to be deceived, but you're a victim of this propaganda reality? And I think that we will have some sort of a standing order for this questions and statements from the audience. All right, colleagues, please get prepared, and let us. We'll have the second microphone. Chechen Republic. Can you hear me? Yep. Does it work? That's good. Colleagues, when three buttons are pressed, so please use every. Katerinburg. I'm a member of the Supervisory Public Commission. I'm Sergei Kirillov from Katerinburg. We visit the penitentiary institutions and check with the rights of the inmates, and there are often people from the Caucasian, from the south of southern Russia, and it is quite often that we have to we would very much like to be in touch with you. Yes, please come over, and I'll leave my contacts, but there are telephones. This is an SMS service which works 24 hours a day. I will give you my phone, and many people write me, but this SMS service, and we know that mobile phones are used in the penitentiary establishments, we do get these messages. I can give you such phones. You can. We're writing about the abuse in prisons, but you know, as well as I do, that often you have to check the information before you take any action, and there are often data and information which need to be cross-checked. We want both parties to be heard in every single case. We want to show both the position of the inmates and also the position of the penitentiary institution authorities. We are often criticized for bringing the position or the opinion of the inmates known. So I will just allow you to have these numbers. I'm Evgeny from Sevastopol. The Caucasian node is not only about the Caucasus, but also about the southern Russia on the whole. Given that Russia now has 2 additional southern regions, would your website try to monitor the situation in Crimea and Sevastopol? Well, we do have one of our web pages in the Ukraine. We do not have much opportunity to work there, but those transborder issues such as the echo of the Ukraine in the Caucasus, this pertains to both the Ukraine, the east of the Ukraine, Crimea, so we are ready to elucidate all viewpoints and to give the floor to those who have something to say and to inform. We even have the so-called tweet translations, tweet broadcasts from the Kerch point in Crimea, where thousands of people had to stand in the traffic jams in summer because of the difficulties with the transportation, car transportation, and so we have already been trying to inform people about this situations. So if there is something that we could tackle, I'm quite open to talking about, quite open to any comments or proposals. Alexei Abanin from Moscow. Can I only ask questions about the Caucasus, or may I also ask questions about the Caucasians living in other regions of Russia? All right, let me give an account of a situation in my life. I was a student of a high school in Moscow, an ordinary high school, and there was a Jamaat in my school, which was a Caucasian community, primarily the Chechens and those who were next to them, who, through the aggression and a very high cohesion, domineered this quite ordinary Russian school, which often led to chaos, fights, which were this led to humiliation of other students and even teachers. This led to a situation whereby my classmates had very pronounced dislike for the Caucasians, and many of my classmates became a part of the nationalist movement. Could you comment on that? Well, my opinion is that there are many manifestations, many examples of unacceptable behavior, including but not limited to criminal activities and crimes. I'm always humiliation is just as unacceptable. I think that those who commit the crimes are not nationalities, but individuals. It was most unfortunate that you had this group of people, many of whom turned to be evildoers, or some people in the army can complain of, say, the people from Dagestan. I'm always deriving from the assumption that it is people and individuals who are responsible for specific crimes. Nationalism, in my view, cannot be justified. If you meet, say, 20 people who behaved in an unacceptable way. Let us say you had such a group of people in your school, and we shall not go into detail. I think that nothing can be a basis for making a conclusion about the whole nation, be it the Chukchis. You would remember the abounding Russian jokes, or the Dagestanis, or the mono-ethnic Chechens. I do not see any justifications for those of your classmates who went into radical nationalism. I simply don't. With that said, I do not in any way justify bullying in the army, for that matter. And we know that nationalism is not unacceptable. No associations of people which have united to humiliate others is also unacceptable. Jamaat and its I hope I have replied. I hope I have replied. I'm not satisfied. Not satisfied with the answer, but I know that I can go into discussing this in this format. Well, thank you for understanding this. Alena. Alena Alyoshin from Khabarovsk, from the Far East. We are somewhat removed from the problems of the Northern Caucasus. However, if I understood you correctly, you are trying to, in a way, protect or help protect the people from the Caucasus or the Caucasian who have suffered some ills in Russia. No, you have not understood me. No. But then what is your task? What is your goal? Why are you doing this? Why are you publishing this? Well, I know where is Khabarovsk. I have been to Khabarovsk quite a few times. I've been to Komsomolsk on Amur. I have been in the Far East. I have traveled. We're not trying to protect anybody. We are a media resource, and I understand that I'm among the colleagues, those who sit in this hall, and not pursuing the task of protecting anybody. I will allow myself the liberty of bringing up a screen which defines the mission of my resource. So we're writing about the problems of the Caucasus, and we're trying to analyze how these problems resonate in elsewhere in Russia and abroad, which does not mean that we are an ethnic media resource. This is not true. We know, you know, that the Russians are an ethnic minorities in many northern Caucasian republics, and there are even some programs to make the Russians come back. Unfortunately, not many of these programs are implemented, but it would be wrong to perceive our media resource as some sort of an ethnic radio or an ethnic media instrument. We write about, say, your compatriots, people from the Far East, who, say, serve in the army in the Caucasus. With respect to our media resource, we have a professional code, a code of ethics, which encompasses some of the guidelines and the principles, both for the journalists and the and those who comment. And reacting on if you don't have a question, then I can comment. If you have a specific question, then I will try to be more precise. Have I answered your question? Yes, all right. Grigory, would you please refrain from asking if you have answered the question of a particular participant, because it is my prerogative to decide if an answer has been given. I think it has. Yelena Shuvalova from Makhachkala. Do you and does your media resource cooperate with the government in any with respect to some information and policies? Well, thank you for asking this question. Coming from above, that's what you said. Coming from above, we may have somewhat different perceptions of what we mean by coming from above. Dagestan is a beautiful land. It would be good to depart from the immediate topic of this presentation and talk a little bit about the journalists' cooperation with the government. I think that it is beyond the scope of our profession. Our goals are in no way related to the informational service of the government. We are trying to be an unbiased media resource, and we do not believe that we should be working at a commission from any body of government, being in Makhachkala, Dagestan, or else do we not believe that we should serve the interests of businesses, big or small. I do not even think that we should serve the purposes of any non-profit organizations or human rights activists. I believe that journalists must be or try to be unbiased, and even though I am not a particularly great fan of Mr. Kadyrov, I am quoting Mr. Kadyrov on my website, in spite of the fact that I might have a different opinion of Mr. Kadyrov, which, if expressed, might have led to even greater problems for the school. In any event, let me say that we are trying to broadcast the opinions of the government, but this is not to say that we are writing about the events in Dagestan from the standpoint of the government of Dagestan, but not give it too much space to this, simply because the government of Dagestan has ample opportunity to broadcast its viewpoint through newspapers, TV channels, radio stations, and so on and so forth. So we are not trying to give too much attention to the pro-government views. So we might then talk about other things which might not be so pleasant to the government. But when, say, the government of Dagestan gives a press conference, we are using these materials, but the advertisement never stops. So I will show you what has remained from the school in Vremeny village after the counter-terrorist operation in this area. Not much has remained. Pavel Nikolin from St. Petersburg. It is quite often when we see and or read the reports about the counter-terrorist operations, we encounter a common statement that the separatists are blocked in a building, and then they're killed during the ensuing shooting. How did this language originate? That liquidation? They're never killed. They did not. They're liquidated. Why is it that this language is becoming so prejudiced and has been so prejudiced? Well, thank you for reading us, and thank you for. I have been praised for my good Russian. Unfortunately, we often use the terminology terminology which is unfortunately not quite up to the norms of the Russian language. A suspected terrorist, terrorist suspect, we don't know who that person was. He was killed in this building, but we call him a terrorist suspect. Once the terrorists, and the terrorists do have the websites, once the terrorist website says that this is our murid who went into the war, and then if the photos coincide, you can call him a terrorist. Or if a person has been in the search, has been wanted, then there may be some reasons to call him a terrorist. But if a person whose name has never been surfacing was killed in a blocked house, then we call him a terrorist suspect, which is in a way a challenge from the standpoint of the literary language, and I agree with that. And I'm very glad that you have brought up this topic, because it does deal with today's topic. Is the journalist deceived? When a journalist in Samara, Khabarovsk, or in Artyom, next to Vladivostok, or in Tver, when he writes in his little newspaper that a terrorist was killed, he never asks himself or herself if there are data to call this individual a terrorist, simply because we do not even know who this person was, and the journalists are never given this information. So it is a challenge, and I think that the terrorist suspect is a proper way to call it. We are often hated for it. We are criticized very harshly. We are told that we are justifying the terrorists, separatists, and we believe that once a confirmation has been received, then the faces of these people come to the fore, and then, while we already know that these were people in the national search, then we can call them, say, a criminal or a terrorist. So while you know that there may be some counter-terrorist operation, and the people who were killed, say if a pregnant woman had been killed, it might have very well been that she was planning a terrorist act, but we can only say it after we have data confirming this fact. So it is important to give the names to try and track down the destinies of these people. Ahmed Paragundin from the Ingush Republic. Grigory, I have two questions. My first question is on that image of a Caucasian person, of a brutal, disorderly, and chaotic or erratic person. Such an image, which has been a product of journalism, or and I'm often feeling this from talking with my colleagues, that once we speak about the good thing, the bad things, the Caucasus is relevant. But when we're talking about the good things, the Caucasus is not relevant at all. So could you comment on the image of a Caucasian in the press? We're also aware of this anti-Caucasian hysteria, which we witnessed on TV before the Ukraine. However, after the Ukrainian crisis erupts, the Caucasians get a much more favorable image. Do you believe that this these cycles are produced by the state? In what cases and when does this occur?
Thank you. Thank you, Ahmed. But your question actually is the one that a PhD may give an answer to. You may be the one who will write it. Just I can share my impromptu sort of what immediately comes to my mind. I know no more than you do about it, and I'm not so sure that I'm reading more than you on Caucasus, and I'm sure I do not understand much about the Caucasus. So the first point you raised about the image or perception of the Caucasus, you say it's this is generated by journalism. I suppose journalism is just something that plays very little role in our life, and that it is now even getting less and less because of PR, journalism, evolution, and propaganda. So I see nothing that could be generated by journalism activity, because there's no journalism. Professional journalism boils down, it's just tiny islets. I wouldn't even call them, just minor values in the ocean of propaganda and PR that anybody does, and whoever may call him or herself a journalist. This is something that is generated by society. Yes, indeed, we have this experience. And a great sociologist in Russia, Levada, said that the Caucasus saved the Jews, and they didn't save them, this is my interpretation, not because of journalism, not because of propaganda, but because somebody becomes a bad guy. You said brutal, you can use another word. But regrettably, now in society there is intolerance, and there is a wish to see some guys scapegoats. What is primary here, bad news from the Caucasus, or is it the space within man which requires that we should have somebody bad, somebody who should be resented, be he a Jew, man from the Caucasus, or man from the far north? But journalism surely is not a target for attacks in terms of speaking about image shaping. Images are shaped by people. Images are shaped under influence, not under the influence of journalism, I'm sure, because journalism is almost non-existent. Yes, we've got enough PR, enough propaganda. The second point that you raised is even more about propaganda than about journalism. The cycles about perceiving people as good or bad, is propaganda. Don't you think ridiculous when Russian officialdom, maybe it's the wrong place to mention them here, say something about non-selective use of force in Ukraine? I'm sure that the Ukrainian army indeed destroyed a number of living houses, has attacked many civic targets in events. It's not only the guilt of whatever you may call the militants and the militia. I'm sure that the Ukrainian army has committed many bad things. I'm sure that they non-selectively. But when I hear it from Russian officials, I feel sad and laughing. What has our army been doing? When I show that school in Dagestan, why is it so destroyed? Was it that the militants? No, there were no militants. That it was empty. This is the way they carry out counter-terrorist operation. Well, the speaker seems as if he were an expert. Why doesn't he go to the counter-terrorism operation? That is interpretive thinking. So this is a matter of propaganda. It's a question to oneself. We shall be tearing hair in our head, saying how awful we are. We are the object of somebody's information policy and manipulation. Or are we adult people? And we're not happy to be deceived, and we can search for information. We can understand that image shaping, it's not an objective and official. With their portfolios, with their suits, by Brioni, with corruption, it's our objective. It's what we have to do. I understand for you, maybe you find it very hard, very often, but you, I suppose, I'm very sorry, I will put this word, you should try to do it on your own, because mass media, propaganda, they do many things to shape something bad. But it seems to me, what do we do to shape this image? What I personally can do, whose business is that? Is this what the government of the Republic of Ingushetia, Dagestan and Chechnya have to do? No, it's what we have to do. Are we about to live in one country in 100 years, or shall we continue hating one another? That will start seceding and separating. So rude as it may sound, I think that questions like this should be something that we should try to find an answer, not to blame journalism, the state, or even society. I'm sorry for being so blunt. Dagestan. Hello, Aznur Abdurashidov from the Republic of Dagestan, Russia. My question is, you're speaking about the problems of the Caucasus, and certainly at a website it can be seen, but it often that you publish positive things about the Caucasus, because apart from bad things, many good things are happening. This is my question. Thank you. The term that is very strongly liked by our Russian officials, positive, I strongly dislike it. I feel that this image, this idea, well, certainly our officials are ready to pay for positive stuff, for puff pieces. I don't know, is that what you mean when you mean about something that describes something in a positive light? When they say positive, because in Russia there are two words, positiv and положительно, they mean biased information, which is like an advance of some great things to happen, inauguration of factories and big ships and whatever. When I should find something, we can write about it. Well, do you think that this is a rhetorical question, because we have a moderator, I'm not asking you questions. I think that positive information is, as I shared with you about temporary settlement in Dagestan, you know where it is. I dislike the word positive, but in my view, officials in Dagestan should have done more to tell people about volunteers who brought some help to this settlement where God knows what is going on there. But this is not quite what can be called as positive in today's Dagestan. Why? Although we tell about these guys who have brought something, some food, warm clothes, people don't have warm clothes. They're high in the mountains, the weather is not like that. It's really very cold there. It's not positive information. It's not anything positive. Although they did something good, but they're drawing attention to the problem. And why do we need to draw attention to problems? Let's rather draw attention to the places where there are no problems. And this is where I'm going back to what the news is about. I think that the news has to do with some changes, with some events. And once we see changes in events that have to do with some specific achievements by officials, this is something we should write about, but they're not so many as we would want to. Press releases are not about the news. There's 99% of press releases out of 100 that we receive cannot be used by us. This is my answer. I apologize before Chechnya. While we have other volunteers, you're on the waiting list, because you already asked something at the beginning. Well, our Tuva Uzel, north in Tuva. Indeed, we have very serious problems, but my question is about something else. We are very interested, myself and people sitting next to you. Have you received threats? And secondly, what? I find it hard to come up with my question. The most important challenge, the most challenging challenge of nationalism, in your view, microphone please. Well, let it be in the Caucasus. What can become very, very serious in the near future that it will be impossible to address with legal, usual state measures? What should we fear? My God. Thank you. Indeed, quite a note that you put it in. I suppose we should fear ourselves. We should fear indifference, the good environment to breed terrorism, which is considered to be that we should fear, is not so much its inefficacy of law enforcement, although that is certainly plays a role. It's not so much radical extremist views, although that certainly is there. It's not so much low education, although high level of tolerance to manipulations. When people are prone to manipulations, when a vast number of people, because of poor education, a low quality of life, may be easily manipulated by. Well, it's there, but it's not that. These problems certainly are there. In terms of specific manifestations, they are much fewer than in us, people who live in this country, who do not care about things that are going on there. Or when our from Tuva, for example, contracted by the army, this is where we to some extent try to unravel where they were, why they were murdered, or if they were killed, and regrettably we have had some cases. What happened there? I suppose this reluctance to respond, reluctance to read, reluctance to comment, reluctance to see this is something that you should do, that it's your business. This brings about the most marginal things that may not be supported by us as a majority, free, normal, thinking people. But this apathic majority that is like marsh, they're not interested in anything and they don't want anything. Mass who disregard what is going on in the Caucasus just because modern world in Russia now says that if we just read about things that are going on there, many things will not carry on happening that are happening because of lack of our involvement. Well, kamikaze attacks, what is the purpose these people pursue? How much in this terrorism, how much communication, how much desire to attract attention? What do they want to attract attention to? I'm not justifying them for that matter. I'm not. But how much things that go beyond this explosion, which is suicide and murder of people around you. Many things like this. Who are they appealing to? Certainly not to Ministry of the Interior and Putin, when his speech may mention if this coincides in terms of dates. They appeal to us. What do they want from us? What can we reply to them? We are silent. We think that this is what the law enforcement have to do with it. And when I'm raising this question, I don't mean that somebody expects some political answers from us. I'm not saying that our answers are in the politics. It's about involvement, about knowing what is going on there, because in absence of information, people should not feel that they live in a vacuum. In absence of sources of information. That is why I think, strange as it may seem, the challenge lies not so much about what goes on, not about actors, but about those who do not care, who are impartial. Well, I dislike speaking about the threats, but the answer is positive. Colleagues, may I ask a question? Which surely can be asked by many, but you're shy to ask. Gregory, but how are you making both ends meet? There are no probably money coming from abroad. Where does this resource? Because of money coming from abroad? I beg your pardon for being so audacious, but if switching the microphone is considered to be a good presentation, then probably I made the wrong address. Don't quite understand you. If you switched off the mic in the school, well, I got your point. I don't quite understand in the context. And I had thought, but we're both right. I gave you the floor, but the colleague didn't use it. I apologize and give you the floor for the second time. Thank you very much. Mentally, indeed, have many thoughts. Remember to introduce yourself, so Grigory. Gapur Gaisulayev, Chechen Republic, journalist, blogger. I've got many thoughts, but I have to, with your permission, to begin with showing compassion to people like this who, in the same way, but still I will be guided from neutral, peace-making policy position, because I have a very different understanding of this. Well, now, I'm returning to this thought, this unpopular thought, that inter-ethnic tension in Russia and in the Caucasus does not exist. What we have is xenophobia in mass media. There are pseudo-patriots such as Navalny, Zhirinovsky, and somebody who in some way influence young people. The question is for you. How can we get across to these young people where they want to beef up social tension and make it nationalistic? Well, social tension, nationalistic contradictions, inter-ethnic. Well, I certainly cannot give an answer to a question how. How can we get across? But I suppose they're in fact the way they are right now trying to get across there, would say just knocking. They're knocking so hard that you cannot hear anything else. Using maximum sound and sound making instruments and tools, I suppose it's wrong. Well, somebody may give some nationalistic character and others to something else. Well, maybe somebody is wrong. Why should people like this be punished? I do not understand. If somebody is violating Russian legislation, and it's very strongly detailed in terms of extremism, so we're describing that for a number of these questions that were raised here, and for many questions that were given, you can do whatever you want. So I do not feel that pluralism is something that we should fight. I think that diverging opinions is right and good, and the very fact that somebody is wrong, including myself, that's normal. I think it's wrong when there is one mainstream point of view, and this main point of view, for example, that, well, when they draft some nationalistic model, some people or other, this is something that needs to be broadcast and nothing else should be. I suppose that there is a violation of law, then you work about it. If none, it's just voicing opinions. I don't see any much trouble. Moreover, I think that the more frequently the man voices one's opinion about Russian legislation, the better. The more chances we have, finally, as time goes by, for 1,000, for 10,000 times, to say something, oh dear, we said something silly, but who's responsible for that? Well, for this silly opinion, for this provocative opinion, this biased opinion, who is responsible for that? I don't suppose it's something that the state should do. I suppose it's something that all of us present here. It's not society that needs to put them in prison and to punish them. But if somebody provokes for some action, well, that is certainly bad. There are articles in the criminal code for that, but overall, what is lacking is discussion. We don't have enough. Are we talking to one another in us? I suppose things are so over-regulated here. In social media, people are writing something, and the way they find themselves, they didn't urge to beat somebody. Well, somebody may have given such a silly thought, but when I see right now cases against bloggers, cases filter the content, I think it's all wrong. And this is a question that should be asked about ourselves, not how it is better for the state to control, but how do I communicate with my neighbor, who sincerely thinks that all people of such, say, ethnic affiliation, say, are thieves, for example, or sell drugs, for example. Deliberately, you know who, or steal horses. It's not the Caucasus here. Many people think so. And there are people who deal with gypsies, and there's something that they face. Where does it come from? Oh my God! You read Russian literature? Is that from there? Oh, did they break into your flat and stole everything from there? Do you think you can, or the fortune teller gave you something else? So how tolerant are we to other ethnicities? How are we ready to listen to one another and to hear oneself out? This is what I'm just answering the question, not through mass media, not through government, not through propaganda. But heroes, Laos, Zhirinovsky, Navalny, this is somebody we do not need. The thing is that we are capable of. I don't suppose you do. Gabor. And thus I apologize for this misunderstanding, but we'll continue. We have another 10 minutes, dear colleague, after which the expert will leave us. Please, you have the floor now. Good day to everybody. Once again, Igor Хорошилov from Rostov-on-the-Don. I spent almost all my life in Khabarovsk. That's why I'm so transparent. And once again, thank you for having your media. Because what about journalism in Rostov regions, to which are now in prison, Tolmachov and Reznik? You're the only ones who are writing about them. Well, I'm the third, but I'm still free. I would like to ask a silly question. What is the average salary about your correspondence? And the philosophical question: which of definitions of journalist you find closest? There are a number. Some come from a textbook, some come from Europe, some were voiced here. But who is a journalist? What is a journalist? He's an encyclopedically educated person. Well, they're very smart people, and I do not know. I work, for example, not as a journalist, and not with editors. I work with people, and they're doing something that we can use. I don't put it as an objective. Whether it is a journalist or he is here physician. Well, they murdered a journalist who many years worked in Dagestan, but he was a cardiologist. I never really cared to which extent he's a journalist, but I always realized that he was first of all a doctor. The definition is not really significant for me. Is not. Because... So... There are many people who you may ask, well, I'll tell you, in point of fact, we all are all journalists and poets and philosophers, are we all enamored in some times of our life we can be in any of these roles. So at some time some become most important, and interhuman relations and attitude towards somebody else. What do you call it? This is human in man. Man has animal and beastly nature. But thinking is something that goes beyond our beastly nature. There is something shining there, we suddenly realize. And those who do understand, he can be a journalist, because this profession, it immediately implies that you communicate love and something else. We do not have salaries. We pay people for what they do. We were saying, 25 journalists whom we want to award prizes to, and there were people who published 800 pieces or 200 pieces. I won't give you an answer, it's my personal question. And I'm very happy for mentioning Tolmachov, because this is where we have people whom I would like to urge not to be impartial. When I said Kushevka, some of you may have remembered that massacre, but very few of you, probably like you, thought that it was in Kushevka that Rostov journalist got 9 years sentence. It's not always that they sentence person to 9 years in prison of the hard labor. Maybe he was extorting or not. I cannot give an answer to this. But this is a fact I want to read. In Kuchovka, on the 8th of December, this is chronicle of what is going on. Look at this. Sentences for murder, 9 years, not every time. Murderers get, let alone high-ranking figures who sometimes turn out free. Don't mention any names, because it may help us, it may prevent us from living a long life, but everybody knows it. But for 9 years, this is what now going on. This is a journalist, and this is Kushevka. Kushevka did not end in massacre, it's continuing, given our impartiality. Because if those materials, if that man, at least somebody wanted to know about that person who live across the country, if just this knowledge were dispersing, if many people wanted to receive it, I'm sure we would have heard different reaction, because our court is not impartial here. Please remember to give your name. Arslan Datsev from Dagestan. I'm very restrained and very patient, but to voice my opinion I can't do it. My father is Chechen, my mother is Belarus. We live in Dagestan. My mother is Orthodox, my father is Muslim. She knew how to raise in me these patriotic feelings, despite the fact that she doesn't belong to that region. In point of fact, our people very responsive, very kind. They will always support and help you. But those who travel to central cities in Russia and show this negative behavior, poor manners, bad manners, they are outsiders in my view. Those who couldn't show it in my region maybe could not achieve something, but this is my viewpoint. I wanted to share, I wanted you all to know, I wanted you to understand that actually we have very educated and very clever people, but those negative things, what it goes from, it's from beyond, I will put it this way. Bravo! Well, thank you very much, Arslan. Dear colleagues, for that matter, I will now give the floor to Grigory. I wanted to use this opportunity to urge you all, apart from talking here at the sessions, please communicate, speak to each other, because this is a unique chance to one another. It's a unique chance to talk to people who live maybe far away from you. Just try to understand each other. It's no less important than what we do here at our sessions. Grigory, I'm sorry, please. Well, thank you, and it's great that you, excellent opinion. I would not really be categorical. It's not really outsiders. I wouldn't really think that anybody that comes to Moscow are people who were described using the word Jamaat. Well, all kinds of people travel. We see excellent people and horrible people travel too. And wonderful people live in Dagestan, and not only wonderful people live in Dagestan, and not only in Dagestan, everywhere we have people that may come in all sorts. And we are judging by this, that everything comes in variety, in diversity, and it would be right to be emotional, it's right to be objective, and it's right to understand that you can be wrong, and you can judge, and maybe too complimentary towards those people who stayed, and be too aggressive towards those. But some people do not come from bad intentions, but because of bad life, and people do not, in difficult situations, they, as Sinakosov was telling us, that we're not only humans, but we're also animals. So I was very happy to hear your words, and I think that this is what somebody has to do, to influence. We think that everybody who comes here, they get into some other environment. But in point of fact, that they get here into corruption, into extortion. And what is the shared responsibility? I'm a Moscovite. I have nothing to do with Caucasus. What is the shared responsibility? We respond so passively to routine of our days and to petrol of our social. Has become corruption, discrimination, has become this attitude towards to anybody who traveled from Dagestan or Yakutia. What is our responsible for that? I do not know. But I know that it's there. And I know that we should ask these questions in our personal capacity, not just an editor and a journalist. Well, thank you very much. Well, apart from what Gregory was referring to, I cannot but give the due to the most intelligent manner of presentation, and how elegantly our guest is doing it. Let us thank him. Half an hour break.